like giving up our facade, like the perception I had of myself. I had to go through a whole process of breaking that down, and that felt so uncomfortable, and it also felt like I wasn't really getting to any like relieving emotion yet. It was just like, oh, every day is like a challenge to my perception of myself. But at the end of it, it's really good. You get to, well, here it is. Here it all is. And I'm not always trying to fight with the definition of myself that I think I should be. I just am how I am now.
So fundamentally, it starts from the refusal to be humble to emotion.
What helped you get through that, Mary?
That whole process. Jesus. No. Staying engaged. Every time I ran away, nothing happened. It all shut down. I was just miserable. Because also, once you start to get your facade challenged and you kind of like truth in your soul, then you can't really let it go, and it's just like, I can't go back and I don't want to go forward. But just staying engaged with someone who wanted to give me truth just helped me immensely. And having my feelings.
And learning how to be humble.
And even if, I had a lot of problems. I was very, very angry, but a lot of problems acknowledging that, and feeling that humbly. And that really helped me every time I went and did that, even just felt my anger or felt I can't do it, or I felt, I'm scared, or I feel like I'm letting go of something that's really precious, that I wanted to believe about myself.
But fundamentally, you've got to discover for yourself why you want to resist truth. Everybody's got their personal reasons, and you've got to discover that for yourself, really, in the end. Somebody can present truth to you, but it is exhausting presenting truth to a person who doesn't want to know it. So at the end of the day, requiring somebody to do that for you is actually an unloving thing in itself. It's exhausting presenting truth to a person who doesn't want to hear any. That's why God never does it.
It's a waste of energy.
It's a waste of God's energy. God doesn't even bother doing it. All God does is let the law do its work until such a time as you really want to know it.
And in mediumship, we've had that really interesting example lately as well, when spirits come who really want help, who are really asking for truth, compared to spirits who come who are just a bit cranky, and they want to engage a conversation, and there's an opportunity to give truth, but always the outcome is less impactful for the spirit, because that desire isn't there yet.
They're not ready to change. Conversations with people that are not ready to change are basically not worth having, really. And you're personally responsible for getting yourself into a stage of wanting truth. God makes you personally responsible for it, and the law will help. The pain and suffering experienced because you're breaking the law helps, but I've seen people fight the law for centuries. So it does boil down to just getting into a new state yourself and desiring that state. And that requires a lot of sincerity on the individual's part. So
when I said how I got through it, and I was joking when I said Jesus, it's kind of like I had to do that for myself, but I really acknowledged the generosity of Jesus in that process with me.
But I wouldn't do it again. In my current state.
And I can see how I really kind of abused the situation, because he was willing to keep presenting things to me even when I was fighting them, and that I see now as a very big gift. I wanted that. I kind of demanded that, which is why sometimes I call you guys on it, because I can see the error of my ways. But the fact that he was still giving enough to do that, it's a gift. Like I said in mediumship last week when there was someone who was resistive. Last week. Well, it's a choice now. We don't have to talk to this spirit. It's a choice whether or not we do. And that's what I acknowledge in Jay, is that he made that choice to give it to me, and ultimately I benefited.
And not always too. I had some addictions of my own of, being hopeful. Like I've always had quite a strong error of being hopeful about people wanting to improve. And a lot of that is to avoid your own personal pain about people around you not wanting to grow. So you keep presenting something because you hope that the person will be more loving, but that's really because you don't want to face that they're not being loving. Does that make sense? And once you give that up emotionally, then after that you're far less willing to do what I was doing. So you've got to learn to face the reality of things. And a lot of the ways that I used to avoid my own emotions was to not face the reality of the situation around me. And so, because a lot of times people be very unloving, and I'd always be hopeful that they would actually have some realizations and change, when reality was saying, look, they have no intention of changing. Does that make sense? Yeah. So now I'm more focused on, if a person has an intention to change, then of course I will engage and give as much of my time as I can. But if I feel from a person there's no intention to change, then I don't want to give any of my time anymore.
And I actually feel like that's more beneficial on the receiving end, even, because it definitely leaves you more with, well, I've got to make
Obviously,
a
I
choice.
don't want to change,
I'm not.
Yeah, well, if you're sincere, it leaves you with that. If you're insincere, you end up leaving with a lot of rage. So a lot of people I talk with now, come to me thinking they are sincere. I tell them they're not, and I don't want to engage with them anymore. And then they leave and they go into these rages and start abusing me to other people and stuff like that. Not understanding that I'm giving my time as a gift anyway. The fact that they're even there in the first place was a gift. So... But now I'm far less willing to just say the same things over and over again, in hoping that there's a different outcome, that a person realises something. Yeah, each person is. I suppose one of the reasons too I used to do it was because I felt sort of responsible for everybody. I realise that most people don't know truth, and when you know the truth, the error can be sometimes that you feel responsible for other people not knowing it, and you're not actually responsible for that. So one of the things that I've been working through a lot is about not feeling responsible for the fact that people don't know the truth. Even though I know it.
Is that what the kind of ethos of Jehovah's Witnesses, that they had this desperation for everyone else to find the truth?
Yeah, I suppose you could say that. A lot of preaching type of, there's a lot of religions that are preachy, and one of them is the Jehovah's Witness faith, another one's the Mormon faith. And there's a general feeling in those faiths that they're responsible to share truth with people in the world who don't know it, even if those people are not asking for it. And obviously it's driven by personal, emotional reasons, not because the reality is God doesn't share truth with you unless you want it. Other than that, God just relies on the law He's created to deliver the truth to you through pain and suffering, or through positive outcomes. That's how. If you look at the law, the way God's constructed every law, there's compensation, you could say, that is positive in the sense, it's all positive, but there's there's what you call positive feedback coming from the law, which is telling you you did a good thing. And then there's negative feedback coming from the law, which is telling you you did a bad thing. Both things are very good that they happen because, one way or the other, you're going to learn you did the wrong thing. And also what the right thing is as well, which is an essential part of conversation, is learning what is right, not just learning what is wrong. And so God basically constructed the laws, and God relies on those laws, and they work with mathematical precision, and those laws correct a person's behaviour whether they want the truth or not, is the net result of those things. Whereas when you enter a personal relationship with God, now you have to want the truth. That's a different state than, not caring whether you have it or not. Yeah. Once you want it, now your heart's more open because you're expressing a desire for it. Your heart's open, so it can't be an intellectual state, it's got to be an emotional one, where your heart wants the truth now about matters. Now God has lots of other opportunities to share the truth with you besides the law. He can encourage some spirits to come and talk to you. He can encourage a person on earth to come and talk to you and share it with you. And God himself can share it with you through your conscience. And of course, unless your heart is open, the conscience won't work. So this is why most people on earth can't hear God sharing truth with them, because the conscience isn't working.
So beautiful, that, isn't it? That when you want it, it's so generous.
But it has to be God's measurement of your sincerity. It's not your measurement of your sincerity. You know what I mean?
You notice that,
Yeah. It's like, quite often we think we're being sincere when we're not. And, God will always provide the truth when you are sincere, but it is God's measurement of whether you're sincere or not your own. Yeah.
There's a beautiful example in the Robert James Lee's books when can't remember the name, he loses his last matchbox, or loses his
the little boy.
Yeah, and then there's influence for, they send out to different people, and then they wait. I thought that was
We were talking yesterday about like when you sincerely long for help from a loving person, that it always comes. Like even I was talking to the guys about how a lot of times by the time we're 7 or 8, we're so disillusioned with everything, we don't actually ask for help for anything ever. And we have no faith that help will come or that a loving person is there. But I was saying, like, it's like a law of the universe that if you really want help on an issue sincerely, it will come. That God created it that way. It might not come in human form, but often, humans are influenced to help. Yeah. It's really beautiful.
You don't get it unless you get it.
And it's really just our anger, isn't it? That stands in the way of that. Like, for me, I just want to keep waking up to the fact that I'm still in a tantrum. I still want something else.
I don't think it's just as simple as anger, though. It's, the reasons for our anger are very complicated, and it does require a lot of humility to find them.
Yeah, but it's still the cause of it. The result of it is still a layer of anger, isn't it?
But the anger is an effect.
Yeah.
It's not a cause. The anger is the effect of you wanting power over something that you feel is too hard, or you feel justified as too hard to feel, too bad to feel. So a lot of anger comes from a lack of faith, actually.
Some point.
So if you deal with your lack of faith, a lot of times your anger will dissipate. And so anger is not necessarily an emotion you have to feel. You need to be conscious of the fact that you're feeling it, but it actually comes from other feelings, usually associated with humility or faith, that cause you to be in a rage. And rage is about wanting power over, or wanting to hold on to your lack of faith, or wanting power over your hard emotions. So a person who stays in anger is, and then goes, well, all I got to do is release that anger. If you don't understand what is the cause of your anger, it's very, very hard to release the desire for it. Does that make sense?
Isn't the anger, from my experience, the anger is, I'm trying to avoid the cause of the anger in the anger. And so
Correct.
unless I go into my anger with kind of a seeking.
You've got to go into it with a seeking attitude to get below it, not just to have it.
Because
You can stay in rages for centuries. You got to have a desire to get below it, and below it is faith issues or humility issues, and even humility issues are frequently faith issues. So an issue of humility is I don't have any faith that if I cry it'll fix.
Faith in the truth.
Yeah, no faith in in emotion, God, no faith in God's way. Yeah. So substantially our problems, even our rage, begins with our lack of faith. And unless you're prepared to examine the causes of your lack of faith, the reasons why you have no faith, it's unlikely you'll get out of anger. Yeah. So a lot of people have anger for long periods of time, and in the spirit world it's often to the point where they just have anger. The more anger they have, the more their condition degrades. And they get to a point where they're so exhausted by their anger, they can't be angry anymore because they're just exhausted. But then they've got exhaustion to feel, so you can still stay in that state for another few hundred years if you wanted.
Whereas a bit of faith would pull you out much earlier.
Correct. Yeah, a bit of faith would pull you out much earlier. Yeah.
grieving your lack of faith would get you out.
Well, you've got to grieve the opposite. Yeah, so you've got to let go of the reason why you are so firm. You could say you have faith, but you have faith in the lie. So what you've got to do is give up the lie by giving up your faith in it. And giving up your faith in a lie is an emotional process. So that requires humility, which means feeling your emotions. But so unless you give up your faith in the lie, you will never be able to hear a truth. And when I say hear, I don't mean just with the ears. I mean actually hear it and do something about it. Yeah. So and that requires a very sincere process of engagement. And the more you engage, and the more constancy is in your engagement, the more likely you are to have a breakthrough. It's a bit like reading Mother of Millions, right?
Yes.
In the sense that if you do it once a month, you're not going to get an outcome because it grows faster than you can remove it. But if you're constant on a daily basis in removing it and then checking on it and checking on it, you can see that you can now pretty much eradicate it and keep it under that control. So a lot of issues in life are about how constant you are, how regular you are, how consistent you are at doing something, and
that's the sincerity, isn't it?
Yeah, and your sincerity drives your consistency. Yeah. So if you deal with things once now and then 6 months later you deal with it again, well, obviously that's not very consistent, and it's highly unlikely that you're going to have any resolution using those methods. And also the lack of consistency is a measure of sincerity. So you're actually insincere when you have a lack of consistency. So it's proof or evidence of your insincerity. If a person is truly sincere is always consistent until the issue is dealt with.
So you're not going to get much help in that situation.
No, that's right, because unless you're consistent and you're desirous and you are regular in attendance to the issues, that is a part of how you demonstrate your own sincerity in dealing with the issue. And God's laws measure sincerity through hundreds of different mathematical ways, and one of those ways is how consistent a person is, how regular they are, how attentive they are, how desirous they are, and so forth. And you know, your sincerity is being measured by the law, but interestingly enough, God actually also is very open to measuring your sincerity without the law. God is because as soon as a person transfers from an insincere state to a sincere state, God's soul responds. So it's not just the law. God's soul does not respond until the sincere state is developed, but the law is there to get you to a sincere state. But as soon as you're in a sincere state, not only is the law going to benefit you in that state, because the laws are all measuring sincerity, but now God's soul, God himself is also responding to that state because he wants to. So God now, once you become sincere, God has a personal interest in you now that he didn't have as much before because you were insincere. Does that make sense? So while he's interested in you in terms of caring for you, he's not going to have a lot of interest in helping you until you become sincere. And he actually measures your sincerity. And once you are sincere, he wants to help you. In addition to the law of helping you. Yeah. So.
Seems like a pretty good place.
I realise I'm